Well, hello, everybody. I'm Angela Tom. I'm the Senior Director of Medical Affairs for the Americas at Orchard Therapeutics. Orchard Therapeutics, if you haven't heard of us, I hope you have, is a lentiviral-based hematopoietic stem cell gene therapy company. If we could go ahead to the next slide. Yep, we'll start. Yep. We're saying thank you so much for inviting us here. And also thank you for all of the work that your community has done, the providers, the advocates, the patients, the caregivers. I always like to shout out to the nurses because I'm a nurse practitioner by training. And I know that there's a whole community of people that have dedicated their lives to taking care of MLD families and patients and advancing therapies for these families. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Anna Marie Dillon. She's off camera, so you can't see her. She's our global head of patient advocacy. So she works most closely with patient advocacy groups. Should any questions or thoughts come in, comments come in, she does help us to respond to those. So in my role, I try to do medical education. So we can go on to the next slide. So these are all the programs currently that Orchard Therapeutics is working on. You'll see at the very top line is LibMLD, or darzagene autotem-cel. We like to call it ARSA-cell. For MLD, you can see that it is commercially available in Europe. We have announced publicly that our ARSA-cell package, initial package, has gone to the FDA for a biologic license application. It is a rolling filing, which means that we put in pieces of the package over time. We would anticipate that the whole package will be complete and submitted very shortly, mid-year this year, which means very soon. Once that's submitted, the FDA has 60 days to accept the package. They basically make sure that all the little pieces that they require are in the package. And then after that acceptance, they have usually 6 months to review if it's an expedited review. If they have certain requirements or questions that come along the way, there could be an extension to that timeline. At the moment, should things continue to go as they are going now, we would expect to have approval in the first half of next year. So again, dependent on the feedback and any additional requests the FDA might have. So we're very excited about that, and you can feel the energy start to get rolling. And part of the reason for us to be here is to understand the community better, understand what your needs and gaps are, and understand how we best move forward as this therapy gets to approval in the United States. I do want to take a moment for the patients to walk through the process for an ex vivo lentiviral-based hematopoietic stem cell gene therapy. I did practice saying that many times.
That's impressive. Say that a couple times in a row.
So if we can, next slide. So we'll start here, and I don't have the cheat sheet in front of me. I do know the process, but I'll take a peek once in a while. So first, of course, the patient is screened. We want to make sure that the diagnosis has been made and is genetically confirmed. And then they have additional testing required to make sure that they can undergo cell collection and autologous bone marrow transplant. So there are some screening tests that happen before the cells are collected. Then they go to a qualified treatment center. There's a whole qualification process for any particular center to be eligible to give the product. So first step, get the cells collected. So they are hematopoietic stem cells. They're cells that the bone marrow has produced that are able to differentiate into different cells. They become different cells so that they can deliver the enzyme or protein in different tissues in the body. And then they're collected just like a blood donation, pretty much with a machine. And they're processed in a lab where certain cells are isolated that are ready for transduction with the viral vector. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So we send those cells to a manufacturing plant. Our manufacturing plant is in Milan, Italy. That doesn't mean the patient has to go to Milan, Italy. The patient goes to a nearby center. There will be several, a handful or so in the United States that they would be able to go to. That center sends the cells over for manufacturing. The manufacturing plant does the vector transduction, so they insert the corrected copy of the gene into the cell. The viral vector is not in the cell, right? So the cell contains the corrected copy of the gene. There's a lot of processing that happens to make sure that everything's working as it should, that the cells are able to reproduce, and that they actually produce the protein as we expect them to. They are cryopreserved, frozen, to send back from Milan to the United States to the center. And then once they're received back in the center, the patient returns. I just like to look back and see where I'm at in the pictures. Returns. So the patient can, between the cell collection and the cells coming back to the center, the patient can return home while they're waiting for the cells to come back. This takes several weeks. So cells have returned to the center. The patient comes back to the center. There is a conditioning regimen required that allows for space in the bone marrow for the new cells to go and make a home, right? So that conditioning regimen takes approximately a week. It's fairly intensive therapy. This is by no means an easy ride, but it is an important piece of the process. Okay, let's go ahead to the next. After the conditioning regimen, then the patient is ready to receive the cells. The cells are given. It looks like an IV, if you've ever had an IV, or a blood transfusion, very similar. Patients have described it as a bit anticlimactic after this long process and wait. It's a little bit of a bag of cells that gets infused over a few hours in a single day. After that, there's several weeks of recovery from the conditioning regimen. And the physicians at the hospital monitor very closely to make sure that everything, again, is working as expected. Once the physician decides that the engraftment has occurred and the infections are avoided and the patient is ready to go, they will discharge from the hospital, and they can be followed locally for a period of time and return home if their home is away from the state where the qualified treatment center is located. And next, so I did then take all of those steps and put them on a single slide. And the purpose of this single slide is to really prepare families for the journey. It is, like I said, several weeks. If you start at the top right-hand corner, that preconditioning, that pre-arrival piece is all the screening I mentioned. That can take 1 to 2 weeks, followed by the mobilization cell collection. So the cells have to be encouraged to leave the bone marrow so they can be collected. So that takes a little bit of time. Followed by the manufacturing process. That you'll see is 6 to 8 weeks, and that's the whole shipment to Milan, the transduction of the gene correction into the cell, making sure the cells are very quality controlled and doing what they're supposed to be doing, cryopreservation, and then release and shipped back to the site in the US. So that is the longest time stint in the middle of the process, other than the recovery after the infusion. So the cells come back. The conditioning regimen takes, again, 3 to 4 days, up to a week before either end of admission, et cetera, and 1 day for the infusion of the gene therapy product. So the shortest time in this whole map is the actual delivery of the product to the patient. And then 4 to 8 weeks for recovery, and that's really dependent on the clinical picture, the family, the patient, the physician, the hospital, the location, the geography, all of those pieces. Whew. And on to the next slide. So I want to reiterate that we are here to hear what your needs are. As I mentioned, Anna Marie is here in person, and she does respond to things that come as requests through our website, and our website does have sort of those processes listed in there if you want to read a little bit more about it. There are also pieces on our website for providers. I would say the providers in this audience at this particular conference are well aware of the entire process and probably don't need to read it, but there may be some students or fellows out there that are still learning that might find something of interest on our website. So I will pause, take a breath, and I'm happy to answer any questions or follow up with anything I missed.
If we don't have any questions from online, okay, we will just bring on our next guest, Dr. Laura E. Dang from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Thank you. And it's wonderful, the live audience, applause from the live audience here. This is a very strange experience, let me just say this. I am trying to keep smiling, but I'm vaguely terrified. So Dr. Laura Dang is one of the amazing doctors who works very closely with Orchard Therapeutics, Takeda. She also oversees the largest newborn screening clinic in the United States for leukodystrophies, correct?
We're up there.
Yeah, okay. So she is part of the next generation of doctors who will usher in this new era for MLD. And if you can introduce yourself and maybe talk about what you see as the changes and challenges for our community and what all this stuff means for us as a patient community and as a doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Maria, for having me.
I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV.
So my name is Laura Adang. I'm a child neurologist and really physician scientist. Most of my time is actually spent researching and understanding how to better support our communities in the leukodystrophy space. And for the last 7 or 8 years now, I've been focused on metachromatic leukodystrophy and how really to get us ready for the moment we're about to enter. We are in a transformative moment, and I have so much hope and so much excitement, but the work is really just beginning as a community, right? We are poised on the precipice of being able to help some of our community. And I don't want to overlook how important and revolutionary that will be, but there are going to be many children within our community and adults within our community that still need us to fight tirelessly to improve treatment options for children that are symptomatic, for older young adults and adults that are affected by MLD. So I think our journey is really just beginning. We also need earlier and easier diagnostic testing, and really I think the most straightforward path and the one most lysosomal storage disorders have taken is really working to be added to something called the newborn screen. It is a process where families, when a baby is first born, within really a day or so, they get one little heel prick and we take a drop of blood and we look for treatable disorders. And so once we have a treatment in the United States, we need to be able to find the children in order to offer them a treatment. The process of newborn screening is complicated because it's not just we have a treatment, we actually have to go to every single state and get them to add MLD to their list. And so I think there's a lot of advocacy work and hard work going forward. So to me, I have incredible hope. I think that we are in just a mind-blowing space I didn't even envision 7 years ago when I began this journey. But we still have a lot of work. We need to be able to find our families, we need to be able to help them, and we need to be able to help children regardless of which type or form of MLD they have, because the gene therapy will only help children who are newly diagnosed. And I think that that's somewhere we have to be very mindful of continuing to work towards therapies that can help everyone and being able to slow down the disease to help children when they are having symptoms already. So to me, it's a mix of hope and excitement and a little bit of being overwhelmed because we still have a lot of work to do.
Yes. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it took 30 years for cystic fibrosis to be screened nationally in the United States. And we don't have 30 years. We do not have 30 years. And this is going to mean, I'm sorry to ask, guys, and Lexi's here in the room, and she's been doing some amazing advocacy here in Illinois, which is, and I got to give a big shout out to Illinois, the first state in the United States, big round of applause, to screen for MLD. It is still we're working on it, but we expect it next year. And our families have done a brilliant job sharing their stories, talking to public health officials, and quite literally changing the law of the state. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We don't have 30 years, and I know it's a huge thing to ask of our families who are going through so much, but the only way we honor our children is by making sure that no one has to go through this again. And all of us know the pain of the diagnosis, and newborn screening will not solve all of our problems. It will create new problems and challenges, but it will give an opportunity and hope that we didn't have, and that motivates me every single day. to imagine. I have had the great honor of meeting children who have been identified at birth and seeing them get through gene therapy, and I am never not astounded by that miracle. It's pretty addictive stuff. So our next talk, let's. Oh yeah, so let's do our thank our KOLs, key opinion leaders. Do you want to go back to that slide? Yes. So we're all going to kill Marley for these photographs she's found of us. Paul Orchard, I know you're somewhere getting very angry. I'm not sure if Michael is on this call, but I wanted to, in addition to the amazing families, I wanted to acknowledge that what we call them, you maybe heard this expression, KOLs, key opinion leaders. And our American-based doctors have been working tirelessly to make progress here at the FDA. And they have been, Paul Orchard, he's going to hate this. Paul Orchard, who is not related to Orchard Therapeutics, that is a very common confusion. Dr. Orchard was the first American doctor to treat children in the United States with MLD. And the things that Paul Orchard has done for our community, which he will never take credit for publicly, are astounding. He has spent thousands of hours appealing to the FDA to get as many children treated with MLD as he could. And he has basically donated his time to do this. Michael Gelb, the brilliant Michael Gelb, who was approached, I think, about 10 years ago to develop the test that is now being used for newborn screening. You can't just wake up one day and design a test that can be implemented and used with millions of babies every single hospital in the United States. That takes a lot of work. There are a lot of rules. Michael Gelb is one of the best chemists in the world to really develop these tests, and we were so fortunate that he has joined the fight for MLD. And Michael recently said to me, my work for MLD is the most important thing I'm doing right now. He says that all the time. He is so passionate. He has traveled all over the world to help make this test usable in Europe and the United States. So I have to shout out to Michael wherever you are. Hopefully you're surfing and having a very good time. But I wanted our community to know about Michael. And of course, you've met Dr. Laura Dang, who is with our patients. She is a scientist. She has been doing things that I can't talk about, but she works very closely with the FDA. Let's just put it that way. It's very mysterious.
Sketchy.
Yeah, it's very sketchy. And also I want to thank Barbara Burton, who couldn't be here today, the amazing Barbara Burton, who is a geneticist at Children's Lurie's Children's Hospital here in Chicago. And she was instrumental in getting Illinois to test for MLD. Next slide. Yeah. So the PFDD, gosh. The PFDD has consumed the last year, the patient-focused drug development meeting at the FDA. It is, and maybe Laura can address how important this was. That changed everything. That meeting, which I know was such a huge burden on our community to share their stories, to write those stories, to get our children on screen, to talk about the worst thing that had ever happened to us, and teach the FDA about MLD. And it was not simply some exercise to make people feel sad and pity for us. This was about teaching the FDA about MLD, about the implications of these therapies that are coming forward, and the urgency in the community. And I can tell you with no uncertainty that we would not be at this moment now talking about treatments, talking about newborn screening, if it had not been for the work of our patient families. It wouldn't have happened. I don't even want to imagine that world where people might have just walked away and said, this is too hard. We basically, as a community, cleared the path for newborn screening and gene therapy in the United States. And so I want to thank everyone who participated in those meetings and supported those meetings. The work continues, but I just wanted to acknowledge everyone. We've talked a little bit about what the timeline is. Angela did mention the timeline. We are looking at, is it Q1 or Q2? Q2, first half. I'm going to use the exact language from Orchard Therapeutics. First half of 2024 to have FDA approval. So here is the, yes, there it is. And so what you heard is that we submitted the application, it's a rolling application, and what we do anticipate is that we're going to have to ask you guys to speak again to the FDA. This is not official. There's something called AdCom, where the FDA, as they review the application, may ask for a public statement for the patient community for review through AdCom. This is going to be more work for us. This is incredibly important. This is a tremendous honor to speak at the FDA. This is actually, the FDA no longer does these meetings in person. They will be virtual. But if you are interested in AdCom and would like to be part of AdCom, and it's not official that it's happening, but there has never been a gene therapy application to the FDA that has not had an AdCom. It is like the movies. I think it's the most Hollywood moment you have with the FDA where you get to tell stories, but these are very carefully constructed stories. They are stories about how gene therapy is safe and effective. So those will be the voices we want to hear from. People who have experienced gene therapy and can speak to how gene therapy has impacted their family. And indeed, we will have some of the children themselves. We anticipate that some of the children themselves will speak to the FDA. So that is what AdCom is, and we hope that you will reach out to Cure MLD, email us if you are interested and you want to learn more about the next steps at FDA. Next slide. And then the next step, this is an interesting little thing. I want to just tell people this is happening. So in the United States, there is an organization called ICER that evaluates the value of certain therapies. So ICER is so confident that MLD or that this gene therapy will be approved in the United States that they have invited the MLD community to speak to ICER for public comment about the pricing. So ICER makes a recommendation on the value. And this will be a huge thing, and I do anticipate that there'll be some rather controversial media coverage about the pricing. This will be an expensive drug. This will be probably one of the most expensive drugs that the United States has ever seen. And that will be a very politically charged issue. And I anticipate people will ask questions like, what is MLD and why does it get this drug that's so expensive? So we as a community need to be prepared for that. It can be kind of ugly because people don't know what MLD is, and they confuse drug pricing for an innovative gene therapy for a rare disease with the other stuff that the pharmaceutical companies have done over the years. So as a patient community, people may say some. Now, as a patient community, we may hear some things like, why would anyone pay for that amount of money for a disease I've never heard of? And so we need to be ready for a response to that question as a community. So that's going to, and ICER will have public comment in September. I hope folks will look at our social media accounts where you can actually submit your own public comment to ICER about the disease burden of MLD and why this therapy is potentially transformative and why it is worth a lot of money. It's hard to put a dollar amount on your kid, but this is the world we live in. And they need to understand the value of gene therapy and the value of our children's lives. So again, I'm going to ask for more work from you guys to share your stories and offer your comment to ICER so they can understand what's at stake here for our patient community. And I'm going to let, maybe Dr. Wolf can get the mic here because she's probably had a little more experience. So in a really interesting and amazing bit of work, which is kind of a long story I won't get into today, Germany has been leading the way for MLD newborn screening. And so far, Archimed Life, which is a public-private venture, would you describe it? Yeah, it's a private company in Germany, has screened almost 90,000 children and identified 3. It's actually higher than that. I mean, I'm going to get them up here. They've identified 3 babies. MLD newborn screening is working and has actively identified 3 children. This is not hypothetical anymore. And 2 of those children were referred to treatment. One has a phenotype, I always get this wrong, genotype that is not an LI case. Dr. Wolf, would you like to speak a little bit about what's going on? Because you certainly work with it more directly. Okay, okay. So I wasn't sure if MLDI had discussed it, but
Would you like me to?
yes,
jump in?
please, yeah.
So they have identified, and this is public knowledge now, they've identified 3 babies through the newborn screen who have a definitive diagnosis of MLD. Children we would never have been able to find before they had symptoms. This is transformative for the lives of these families. 2 of these children were within the potential age range to receive the gene therapy treatment, and because it's approved in Europe, they can go through the normal commercial process and just get approval and receive the gene therapy. So it's not identifying children for a clinical trial, it is identifying children for clinical care. And I think that that's a really exciting prospect. We have seen proof of principle that newborn screening can find children that never would have been able to be found, and they can receive treatments they likely would not have been able to have been found in time to receive before. That's incredible. I'm blown away where we are in this space, but we need this access to all children, right? This is a very small pilot program that has been incredibly successful in finding and potentially saving children, but we need this newborn screening process everywhere.
Everywhere. And again, this is very early. This is not, I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. I don't know what the data is, but given the preliminary data coming out of Germany, it could be possible that the incidence of MLD is higher than we have long assumed. So that is also something I think that will be very interesting to watch as we get more data and more information in terms of the incidence of MLD. And it is amazing to think that there are now 3 families who have this information with a newborn and are working with their clinical team in Germany, and that the European teams are really thinking about this new world for MLD. It's not hypothetical, it is actually Samuel Grohol and Lucia are doing this work every single day, caring for German patients in a way that, to me, is still, I can't even, I really can't imagine holding my baby and being told we're going to use gene therapy on a baby that looks perfectly healthy clinically. So that's amazing. And maybe Lisa, can you come up for a second? And yeah, you can sit with Dr. Laura.
Oh.
Yeah. And talk about where we are with the newborn screening and what patient families should be thinking about moving forward.
So we have some exciting developments in the United States, not as many as we would hope, but we have a strategy. MLD is part of Screen Plus in New York, but as of now, we have not picked up anybody there. And we're waiting for the governor to sign the bill here in Illinois, even though it's been on his desk for like 30 days. We're waiting, but it is assumed that Illinois will begin screening in 2024. Which should be great timing with the potential FDA approval. And so we're very excited. There are other states that are looking at implementing pilots. I'm going to be speaking later today about newborn screening in general and kind of how I see the landscape of all of this, but I'm very encouraged by a lot of the pieces that are coming together in different areas that are going to make this easier. It's going to make it easier to push MLD forward. One of the things obviously will be having an approved treatment because most leukodystrophies do not have one. So we're very, very hopeful about what's going to happen in the United States in the next 5 to 10 years. But that is something to just be aware of, that it will likely take 5 to 10 years before every state is screening. We know that from the ALD experience.
So can you say what people should do if they're interested in helping out?
If you're interested in helping move newborn screening for MLD forward, you can contact me or go to LDNBS, Leukodystrophy Newborn Screening Action Network.org, and we would be happy to help plug you in.
Can you also talk a little bit about the RUSP?
Yes. So the RUSP process is very frustrating, but it's but it's very important. So the recommended uniform screening panel is kind of like the recommended minimum number of conditions that states strive to screen for. It's not mandatory, so even though advocacy groups work to get their condition on the RUSP, it does not mean that every state will screen for it. As an example, ALD has been on the RUSP for about 7 years, and only 36 states are screening for it. There are initiatives across the board trying to get states up to speed, giving them funding to implement these conditions, but getting added to the RUSP is a very laborious process, and it's not a guarantee. But if we can get MLD on the RUSP, which I think we have very good likelihood once the gene therapy happens, it will help move things forward a lot quicker, because a lot of states have policies in place to add RUSP conditions. And so it is definitely something that we are actively working on being ready to do, so that when we have FDA approval, we can submit the RUSP nomination and be ready to go.
So as many of you know, the MLD Foundation has been working on the RUSP nomination process for many years. We at Cure MLD certainly have been very interested in working with the ALD community and the Krabbe community on their RUSP experience, which has been challenging to watch. But this is a two-part strategy. One part strategy is that there's this big bureaucratic filing that's done through the federal authorities, and it's let me see if I can get it, the ACH-DNC, okay? And we hope, and we'll send more, if you're interested in joining the fight for newborn screening, and we need all hands on deck, we would love for you to start attending those meetings and speaking to the ACH-DNC members about MLD and why MLD newborn screening should be something they sign off on. So there's an opportunity for public comment, and I invite folks to go to those meetings. And then there'll be a RUSP process, which will be done actually by a lot of doctors and experts and in conjunction with our partners internationally to submit the filing, okay? So that's kind of up to the doctors and the scientists, and that's good. The other part of this story is that we need to lobby all 50 states and the District of Columbia simultaneously. And there will be opportunities to work directly with states on these issues. So if you live in a state, which I assume most people in America do live in a state, right? Or the District of Columbia, whatever that is, then you can join the fight for newborn screening. Because people from Pennsylvania have no business telling people in Idaho what to do. We need people on the ground in every state sharing their stories, talking about why this is important. Lexi has done tremendous work here in Illinois, and we will help you do this. You don't have to do it by yourself. We have resources. We have the amazing Lisa Brackbill. We have our ALD and Krabbe friends on the ground as well who can help. And we're doing this not just for MLD, but the entire leukodystrophy community, because MLD is going to be the first of many genetic disorders that RUSP is going to be hearing about and states need to learn about. So reach out to Lisa, get involved. This is a chance to really impact your state and your home and educate your medical teams in your home state about MLD. That's going to be really, really important. So what can you do? You can share your story in a state fact sheet. You can start going to hearings and learn from Lisa about how to lobby. You can become a lobbyist. Lobbyists are not bad people. They actually do good stuff. There's just bad lobbyists. Okay, but we're good lobbyists. We lobby all the time. And listen and educate. So it is really, really powerful to tell our stories. And no one doesn't love a story more than I do. However, to be effective at this, we need to listen. And we need to learn how our states are operating and how our medical teams do their job and help them help kids like ours. So we have to listen as well as teach. Okay? So Lisa will be creating lots of opportunities for folks to do that, and I hope you'll join us in that amazing effort, because we don't have 30 years. We cannot wait 30 years for this. Any questions for Lisa or Dr. Laura or Angela? Any questions from our quiet crowd in the virtual space? Oh, yes, please. Can you grab a microphone? Oh, it is. It's like, I feel like Oprah. It is Illinois, after all. And someone wants to, what?
Hello?
Yeah.
I am Asma Hansafi. My daughter Nora was diagnosed with late infantile 5 years ago. Nice to meet you in person.
It's very nice to meet you in person. I'm going to start crying. amazing mothers I get to meet. And I'm finally getting to meet her in person today.
I'll get to my question, I guess. Particularly for late infantile, the kids' health deteriorate fast. When I'm seeing the timeline it takes to do the treatment, it's basically 3 months. That's the time it took for my daughter to go from half a child to not be able to talk or to eat or move. So my question is, let's say we have newborn screening. Let's say that the state have approved it. Let's say that the hospital are actually doing the newborn screening. At what time do we treat those babies?
Laura's back.
Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry this is the journey your family went through. I want to treat children as soon as it's safe.
Okay.
I think because the changes happen with just how we're made, I think the changes probably happen even earlier than we think they do. So I don't want to wait, which is why I have to have newborn screening. I don't want families to have any worries about their children or concerns. I think we need to treat fast. So I'm sorry that that's your journey. That's why we have to fight so hard so families don't have to go through what your family had to go through. Yeah.
All right. And so what is as soon as it's safe to treat?
I think we probably need to wait for an approved therapy, which is hopefully imminent, and then we'll figure it out, right?
Okay.
It is probably within the first year of life, but I think what I don't know is whether it's going to be 3 months or 9 months. Does that make sense? And we'll also personalize it to each child in each situation, right? So I think we're very good in MLD with the genetic testing and the blood tests that we can do and the urine test, with understanding with pretty good certainty how fast it's going to begin. And so we will work with families to personalize what we think is the fastest we can do it safely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then I have another question, if I may. Oh, go ahead.
Please, Nicole, come on up.
Thank you. I think we all share your experience that those children deteriorate so fast, and in that phase there is also nothing at the moment we can do, which is terrible for you and frustrating for us. Regarding the newborn screening, we won't wait too long, as Dr. Adang said, but we can't do it at the moment with the very young children of newborn age, because you need to have a little bit of weight gain until you can collect those cells you need to treat outside the body. And that is a kind of a weight criterion, which probably is 5, 6, 7 kilogram. People are working to get it a little bit down, but it will mean that children are treated probably around the age of 6 months. So, and we would like to do it as early as possible, because children with the earliest form who are treated at the age of 15 months, even before you think you see something, have not such a good outcome. So treatment in the first year of life has our preference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was. Oh, Dr. Orchard.
Dr. Orchard in the chat said, I might just mention that we have had 3 gene therapy patients treated thus far by compassionate use, that the 4th was approved by the FDA, and we saw her Monday, and she will have her cells harvested on Tuesday. There are several other potential patients we have started discussions with in the last week as well. So things are moving along really, really well.
So, yes, it's working. And thank you for your beautiful question. And I think you have expressed in your question the pain and beauty of this moment, the hope that other families will not go through. Okay, I'm not going to do this. You're bad. You're taking me down with you, and I'm not going to go down with you. I'm not going down. I have to be the host. But
Gonna smile through.
yeah, well, but this is always going to be the twin siblings of the hope and the heartbreak of it. But I want you to meet some of the gene therapy families. And next time, Paul, wherever you are, you're going to have to come to the ULF and talk to some of the families, because I think when Paul talks about his work with the families, as you know, being from Minnesota, it just is amazing, because I never thought I'd get to see a medical miracle, and I must have seen dozens of them by now, and it doesn't make me sad, it makes me feel better.
I want to be able to do something when you have a chance.
Oh yes, we'll talk more.
Right. So here's my second question, and by fate, it turns out that by profession, I make medical devices, completely different type of application. That's a lot of babies to screen, and hopefully a lot of live MLD to make. How are you going to deal with the challenges of manufacturing the quantity that hopefully the world has to deal with?
Come back up.
I'm sorry if it's a
No,
complicated
this is
question.
good. This is good. This is good. Great question.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly complicated question, but you're right. Those are things that we have a whole team of manufacturing specialists that sort of forecast based on the population size and based on the incidence of MLD, forecast what we expect to come and prepare for that. Is that helpful? Do you have anything to add to that, Anna Marie?
So we have an idea of how many people we likely are going to detect, and we're working on scaling to be able to manufacture that many testing kits, basically.
Well, the testing, so there's two separate. There's the
Yeah.
manufacturing piece, and then there's the lab testing. So Charlotte Chanson, who's not here with us because she's been traveling every week all over the world, and she's at home this week in Switzerland. She works with the public health labs around the world that are interested in getting the test up and running in individual regions. And she is working with them as well as with the vendors. So Archimed Life is on one of the posters on how they get those kits up and running so that it aligns with when the testing is coming.
Thank you.
So we're working on it. It's a very, very intelligent question, but we are paying attention.
So you're going to? Are there any more questions from the audience or from out there? Well, out there in the cyber whatever space, whatever we call it. I guess then I think we're how much time do we have? Oh, great. Perfect. So let's just kind of wrap it up, I think. I want to thank everyone. That was a beautiful session. That went way better than I imagined. So thank you, all of you. Everyone's crying in the room here, just in case you can't imagine. The whole, especially Orchard, they're all dissolving in tears in the corner here. So there is, you gotta laugh, right? They're very weepy at Orchard. Great company, but very weepy, very emotional people. For English people. Laura's laughing at me. Okay, so I want to thank, I've been talking about how all of you out there and here have been doing such great work. And I'm so actually excited to see Dr. Laura's students here from CHOP, who she's trying to rope into this amazing work. And I think Dr. Wolf and Dr. Dang and Dr. Schenker and Dr. Orchard have a very keen view of this world of MLD before gene therapy, of MLD before there was anything we could do for our children. And now to be entering this world where there's this amazing thing we can do for our children potentially means that you get to be doctors for patients who get a chance to grow up. And for all of us, that means, my friend Elisa, that means everything. That's the reason we get up in the morning. That is personally the reason I haven't just retired to my bed and, just watch TV all day. I mean, because this gets to be real. And I can't, I'm thinking back to how I was on the 9th floor of CHOP, when the neurology was on the 9th floor, and being told this. And then to be here with all of you now, which I think is a gift that my daughter has granted me. So all of you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for changing the world. Our children have changed the world. They have made medical history. People will talk about this moment in MLD in history books and journals about the first generation of gene therapies. And it's never going to make up for what we've gone through, but I can't wait to host a gala in Philadelphia in 5 years. And I'll be 60 years old, and Dr. Laura will be there, and a lot of people in this room will be there, and we will be surrounded by children who did not have to go through this. They will come up on the stage, and we will be completely unaware of the fact that they have this mutation in their body. They will look totally healthy and beautiful, and they will sing, and they will be annoyed at all the parents who are crying and getting emotional because they have no idea why everyone is even worried about them. This will become like polio, potentially. This awful disease that no one even remembers. So that is amazing. And of all the people that have done such great work, and it's impossible to single out any one person, I have to talk about the Evanovskys. We all know what it's like to lose at least one child. The Evanovskys had MLD strike down all 3 of their boys. And in 2005, and I'm telling the story that Barbara Burton has told, so I think it's an okay story to tell. Barbara has told this story many times, and I think the Evanovskys have been very public about their story. But they're actually on a very deserved vacation. They couldn't be here today. But I think Sonia and Bob are going to be very annoyed with me if they see this, but I don't care. So, yeah, I don't care. In 2005, they learned all 3 of their boys had MLD. All 3 of them. All of their children. And Bob Evanovsky asked Barbara Burton, what can I do? Can you imagine your entire family has been stricken down by this thing? And he's thinking, what can I do to help? Because this newborn screening thing seems kind of awesome. And Barbara Burton, one of the nation's leading geneticists, says, we're not ready yet. We're not ready. We don't have a test. We don't have a treatment. We can't just screen for this willy-nilly. I'm sorry. So Bob, as he's caring for his 3 boys, starts advocating for other lysosomal storage disorders. And he advocated in his home state of Illinois. And then not very long ago, Barbara Burton called up Bob Evanovsky and said, it's time. We have a test. We have a therapy, Bob. That thing you asked me to do 10 years ago? No, what did I say? 20 years ago. 20 years ago. We're ready. And Bob said, okay. And then Bob calls me up. And Marley was on that call. And Bob is a very soft-spoken Midwestern dude. And Barbara is not. And Barbara's like, it's time, we're going to do Illinois. And I said, Barbara, I don't know. I mean, that's a big lift. And Bob and Barbara just said, oh, we're taking care of this. Kind of in a way that only people from Chicago would say, and, you know, sort of disturbing and unsettling, actually, because they said it very quietly. Oh, no, this is done. It's going to happen. And I said, okay, I'm not. They said, do you need any help? And they said, no, we got this. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll see these people in another 2 or 3 years. What is it, 3 months later? 6 months later? 4 months later. 4 months later, they're like, oh, we're passing a law in Illinois to get this passed. I said, yeah, okay, sure. Call me late. Saw her in January. It had moved through committee. It was on its way, 2 months later, it was on its way to the governor's desk. So I want to thank the Evanovskis for their tremendous work for rare diseases, newborn screening, but in particular, the MLD community. Because when I'm feeling discouraged and feeling sorry for myself, I think about Bob and Sonia and their boys and what they did without any fanfare or, you know, anyone asking them. Bob and Sonia were just called to do this for their children. And I want to thank all of you, because we're going to be asking you all to do impossible things a lot. The doctors, we're going to ask you to do some really hard things. Orchard, you're going to have to do a lot of work. Dr. Wolf is already seeing this new world. She has to transform the health, medicine in Europe to fundamentally change what it means to have MLD. I think about my dad, who used to say, Maria, you don't get to, he said, comfortable people lead easy lives. It's nice to be comfortable. But uncomfortable people change the world. People who are forced into situations they didn't want for themselves are the ones who knock down walls and cause trouble. And he said, you are very good at causing trouble, Maria. And that's maybe what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm going to invite all of us to continue causing trouble and doing good work. And thank you for everything you have done, and thank you for all that we're going to ask you to do in the next year, okay? So, thank you.